Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Data Dispatch. Hope everybody is having a tremendous day, especially with this historical announcement that we see from Palantir and this partnership that is beyond what my expectations were for individual, basically catalysts in this individual stock today. Big move here from Palantir as we see they establish a partnership with, like you guys probably already know, Nvidia. My own personal reaction was this was not on my bingo card for 2025 in the market. And it's pretty crazy because we've been kind of just tracking Palantir since it was down in the mid-10s. To see here now they're making partnerships with Nvidia just shows you the expansion and how well Palantir is really executing in our current economy in the middle of this AI boom. So we're going to be talking about everything you need to know regarding that, where the price action is sitting, how Nvidia is doing, what the market's doing, why tomorrow's going to be crazy, and some other important stocks are going to be reporting earnings like BMNR along with big Magnificent 7 stocks. So if you're a new or returning viewer, hit that like button, subscribe for daily videos. We're trying to hit 30K. Let's see if we can do it. Pop it up on the screen here, Palantir. We'll talk about the price action in a second. The big news here is that Palantir, you even have Jensen from Nvidia saying that this is probably the most important enterprise stack in the world, the Palantir ontology. Didn't really think 2 years ago I would ever hear Jensen saying that. And right here, the partnership is going to create more value for the end user. And at Palantir, we believe that all the upside is downstream from value creation. So crazy to see here, these two of the biggest players. I call Nvidia the AI, hardware leader, Palantir the AI software leader, and now they're coming together to collaborate, to partner. In terms of price action, what you're seeing is Palantir is actually kind of consolidating a little bit. I was expecting a little more of a push, but it's holding around these all-time highs, and that's where you're facing a lot of resistance right here, especially at this 192. You have this big catalyst that now the bears are probably starting to freak out a little bit. On top of that, you're going to be having earnings that's happening November 3rd. That's Monday post-market. We'll be talking about that. Revenues are expected to be over $1 billion. We've seen over 20 earnings per share revisions that are in the bullish direction. In terms of price action, if we see this consolidation here, which my own personal prediction in the short term, I think we likely could, especially with this current recent partnership and with the earnings anticipation that's gearing up. Once you see this break through the resistance point, that's where I think $200 is still definitely as a possible target by the end of the year. This just helped accelerate that. So in the overnight hours right here, sitting at 190. It's pretty crazy to see Palantir at 190, up about $1.31 in the overnight hours, hanging out here. So you're seeing buying pressure, momentum that is starting to accumulate within the overnight session. It'll be interesting to see what happens to the stock, especially with earnings and within the next few days. If there's a slam dunk earnings, then hey, there's really no questions that need to be answered. Talking about futures right now, where we are seeing this. And sorry, before we get to the futures, let's talk about Nvidia. Nvidia is now over $200 at $205. Nvidia has breaking that $200 threshold, especially with the major conference that they had today. I encourage you guys to go watch it. Lots of interesting events and explanations from Jensen himself. So Nvidia here at 205, we see was actually relatively kind of helped bring up and bring resiliency to the S&P 500 index, when actually a decent amount of the S&P 500 stocks, like 300 of them, closed in the red today. Nvidia did a good job really holding this up as this is now approaching a $5 trillion market cap company, which would be the first company ever in America, basically the world, to hit 5 trillion. So in terms of futures right now, little change basically as investors are awaiting the Fed decision. That's what this article is saying right here. I mean, we pretty much know it's about like a 98% chance that the Fed's going to be cutting rates. However, even though this is basically fully priced into the market, you still see a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of hedging, risk off appetite is slightly, just because what happens if there doesn't. It's just human nature that sometimes you're going to see hedging against that whole traditional rationale. But with that, the S&P, where it sits at right now, is at 6,890. So guys, this was just at like 6,600 a few days ago, 6,700 a few days ago. Now it's nearly 6,900, 69. So sitting here at 6,890, I am not mad about where this is. Taking a little bit of a breather with a lot of the companies that we saw today, that's pretty healthy, especially in this big melt-up rally that we've seen. So investors here talking about, of course, expecting rate cuts. The other big thing, The five Magnificent Seven companies are set to report this week for their earnings. We're going to be looking at Alphabet, Meta, Microsoft, Apple, and Amazon post on Thursday. This is why this week is just absolutely nuts. You have five of the biggest companies that are going to be reporting their earnings. If they all are digested and beat expectations and bring future guidance that is improved, that is where you could set up for this year-end kind of blow-off top. Of course, if they aren't as, basically resulted to be as they were expected or as highly anticipated, if they were predicted to do too well, that's where you could see a little bit of consolidation or a pullback, which I think is still, at this point with the rally that we've had, would still be relatively healthy. So basically welcoming both sides of the table, and that helps take my emotional type of consciousness out of the whole situation. And you do have, of course, the whole prospect about what Trump's going to be doing with China, how that's going to be kind of intertwining its way. We've seen a lot of kind of, what you could say is de-risking or uncertainty that is being removed from the progress that we saw over the weekend. I think we just need to see some official announcements from their actual meeting. Hopefully they don't flip the other way, because they definitely can. We know how the tweets have came out and have flipped the whole narrative in the matter of just a few moments. So things are progressing the right way. Let's hopefully, for the bulls at least, they still continue to progress in that direction. Talking about cryptocurrency a little bit, let's talk about BMNR. Ethereum actually seeing a little bit of a sell-off here, along, like I said, with actually a good amount of stocks today. We actually saw a sell-off, even though the S&P 500 was very resistant, up another 0.2% today, basically with Nvidia, Amazon, and Tesla helping to hold those moves up. What you see with Ethereum right here, it was around this $4,100 level, and you see another bit of a sell-off right here, down to about this 4,000 floor, literally right underneath it. The important thing about tomorrow is that BMNR is going to be reporting their earnings. We're seeing signals on X that Tom Lee has bought the dip once again. It seems like under 4,000. Tom Lee comes in heavily accumulating Ethereum, saying here a fresh wallet just withdrew 100 million in ETH from BitGo, perfectly matching BitMine's past accumulation pattern. So just looking at the accumulation patterns, looking at kind of some trends, it looks like Tom Lee is continuing to buy the dip, loading up again, and betting very big on Ethereum. Regarding their earnings, that's going to be coming out tomorrow. A lot of people are anticipating, could Tom Lee announce a staking program for the amount of Ethereum that they have? Because now it's like 2.8% or even over the circulating supply, getting very close to their whole alchemy of 5%. That's the goal. If staking comes in, that substantially will all of a sudden bring a ton of revenue into the actual individual business, into the balance sheet. So it'll be interesting to see when that happens. Not basically if, because we know Tom Lee has stated that it's probably going to be coming at some point. It's more, when is it going to happen? And if that couples here with any type of reversal with Ethereum and Bitcoin, that's basically just been kind of hanging out here around 4,000 for a while now. Ethereum has just been hanging out here over the last month. I think once Bitcoin and Ethereum, if they do get a bid, if they do make a run, I think it's going to be relatively quick. Like I'm talking, I think it's going to be relatively quick. And that's just historically what we've seen with crypto, is that crypto will typically make some of its biggest moves within a year in just a few short days. So for people that hopefully don't want to miss that, or are going to, you get into this whole FOMO type of chasing event, we'll see what happens. And of course, that event could not come at all either. And that would not be the best, because everybody's anticipating that. So we could see the reversal of that actually be pretty ugly. What you see here for BMNR is hanging out around that 51.84. Now with BMNR right here at 51.84 in the overnight hours, especially here at 52.54, it's at a pretty good spot in terms of support. You're seeing support here kind of in the lower mid 50s. We've had nice reversals from the 47s. So if for some reason we don't like earnings, if earnings is not digested nicely by the market, then you could see kind of a retesting of that 47. And if it is, then you're probably going to see resistance being tested here at that 54.55. We've seen a lot of decent resistance at that level. Once it breaks through there, that's where it's going to be testing the 62s again. And like I said, this could go on a pretty big run. It's in this tight squeeze here that's getting tighter and tighter, and it either needs to break up to the upside or the downside, because this base is starting to form with a lot of volume that continues to pile in. So Other than that, it's all but a half for you guys. Just wanted to pop on here saying congratulations to all the bulls that, have been holding Palantir for this long. And we will see what happens with some of the meme stocks, some of the, full cloud infrastructure stocks, in terms of Nebius and things like CoreWeave. You can see all down about 3% across the board. So we'll see what happens. Peace out. Take care. Catch you guys later.